My book is about, I should say, my book co-edited with Adrian Dixon at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Our book takes a more nuanced approach toward race in education, specifically looking at the ways in which education, in some respects, has resegregated, and taking a more nuanced approach in moving away from the traditional sense of where and who children get to go to school with, and looking at the ways in which children are segregated within schools by ability, by race, by gender, by sexual orientations. So it's kind of a more nuanced, sophisticated way of thinking about the same topic of race in education, inequality, and segregation. There has been progress. I think to not acknowledge that would be disingenuous, but again, we have to look at some of the ways in which, why is it certain groups continue not to advance given where we are today. So again, you have this like opportunity hoarding, which again, when you start to peel back the layers, really speaks to, you know, what is this really about, what's really going on here. And so one of the things that you find is that there's this undercurrent of racism. We have the overrepresentation of African American males in special education. That would be understood as a form of resegregation in schools. You know, we have this shift now in the larger educational discourse where should we move to single-gendered only classrooms, and there are a variety of reasons or put forth in terms of why that should be the case. So, you know, some would argue that gifted education is a form of segregated education. So again, it really depends on one's perspective. It was the Supreme Court's case in it was Parents and Community Schools versus Seattle School District Number 1. And so it was a case where you had a small group of parents in the more affluent section of Seattle kind of pushing back against the Seattle School District's voluntary integration program. The rhetoric behind it was this program which had a minimal effect in terms of disrupting where students got to go, if at all, because there were all these exceptions or waivers. For example, if a student already had a sibling in that school, they would get priority, or if it was close to home, they would get a priority. And so the disruption factor was really not a factor at all, but you know, there was this pushback, and so the Supreme Court essentially said that you can't voluntarily integrate your schools. And in some respects, it was a irony because they used the Brown v. Board of Education decision of 1954 to justify striking down integration. I think one is just shifting the discourse and raising one's awareness about these issues that are going on, which is one of the aims of the book, but then also really trying to, when we make that shift, try to get larger buy-in, like, you know, this affects all of us. You know, either we can pay and ensure that people have access to a good quality education on the front end, or we pay for it on the back end in terms of lost human capital, increased funding for the criminal justice system, lack of civic involvement, civic participation, as well as increase in social resources. So I think we all have a stake in this.